Hi there. Thanks for coming tonight. Can everybody hear me in the back?
Yes.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for coming out. It's a great honor to have you here. I'm going to go through some slides that sort of talk about the work in the show, as well as both my approach to materials and my conceptual approach to my work. I'll start with the long road to the studio. So I grew up in North Miami Beach, Florida, and certainly this feels like coming home, especially since many of my family members are here, which is just an exquisite honor for me, and I thank them so much for coming. I wanted to talk just briefly about my path to becoming an artist, because I know that many of you are students considering a career in the arts. My career was a little bit unconventional because I spent about 30 years doing office work full-time while making my art before my job. And I worked on weekends. This is me working before I would go to my day job, actually on Phoenix, which is in the gallery. The question I lived with throughout my life was, what does it cost a woman to claim her creative life? How do we fully become as women artists? And eventually I stopped asking permission to be an artist. And so the urgency and the scale of my work is about the refusal to become precious. I have to become fully realized. And that is very much what this show is about. There's a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, I think I too.
Can people still hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Great. So I'm going to start with my collage paintings. I'm very honored to have Bridget Mayer here tonight, who is my gallery representative and the curator of art of the exhibition. And she had inspired me to make these works, which are collage works on panel. And this is, you'll see some installs of the show as it originally was in the gallery with my first solo show with Bridget, just to give you a sense of the context of the work. We have Amulet 3, and I think that these are examples of what you will see in the gallery if you haven't already been. These are collage paintings and drawings on shaped aluminum. And amulets are a source of sacred protection. And so my work is about creating objects of healing that rejuvenate the spirit. And this is Amulet 4. These are all in the 35 to 37 range. Now, this series is, it's an homage to my sister. And this is Sister Wong, and she's here tonight. We are separated by coasts, but this is my love letter to her. So this is Sister 1, and this is Sister 2. And so one of these is her, and one of these is me. And so these are more intimate in shape. These are 35 inches roughly, and again, they're collage paintings and drawings. And I do this sort of layered quality in my work using candle smoke. I paint, I draw, because I believe that when we look through time in our lives, it's very much about seeing our history through a different lens. We remember history differently as we change and look back on it. These are works that were smaller and they're also part of the Amulet series, and they were inspired again by nature and the healing quality of rocks and gems. So this is Amulet 6. And these are all hung in this grouping in the gallery that you'll see. Then there were these larger paintings that I was doing, which were called Talisman, because believed that at this point in my life, my artwork was an object that was transitioning me to a new place. My art has always been a conduit for transformation, and I always saw a talisman, the idea of a talisman, as an object or a sign. So this is talisman 1, which is in the show, and is was a piece that involved candle smoke. It's about 6 feet across. Again, this idea of both pain and also transformation and things growing over. This is one of my favorite paintings in the show, Talisman 2, which incorporates water and aquatic elements. And because I come from Florida, water was always very important to me. And I can remember, swimming with my cousins, many of my cousins are here tonight, which I am so honored that people have come. And so this piece feels very grounded also in sort of a shared childhood of being in the pool and seeing the ocean and seeing Biscayne Bay and spending time together. So as you can tell, a lot of my work is influenced by myth or sort of archetypal figures. Myths survive because there's a truth about them across cultures. They're maps of human experience. So figures like Lilith, Psyche, the Nereids, Hydra, Phoenix all transform under pressure and regenerate. They refuse to stay put. I live in California, and certainly, feminist spirituality and Zen practice is a core part of my growth as a woman, standing into my own, because it asks, what does it mean to be broken, but also to be able to be repaired? And I'm not really sure where I heard the term radical repair, but I think in my late 30s and 40s, because I was a businesswoman, I also got an MBA in finance because I really believed this idea of Virginia Woolf that a woman must have a room of her own. And so there's a lot of ways in which my work is about establishing that I'm here, that I'm not going to disappear. And so the work, Radical Repair, is, we'll talk about some of the pieces here in a minute, but it's not going back to the original. It's the willingness to evolve into something new. Because when you repair something, in many ways it becomes more beautiful. Because it is not perfect, but it becomes beautiful in its becoming. So this was a series of works, drawings on panel. And these were some pieces that were originally installed, of course, with Bridget. The larger piece there went to the George Healing Arts Center, which was, he was a very inspiring person that I met through Bridget, who was very committed to art and healthcare, and so he acquired that piece. But the remaining works here are, I use this type of candle smoke and draw on panel and then do these sort of spirally forms. And the idea is that when you burn something, it's both eraser, but yet it's kind of the smoke of memory and time. And they are layered with soft colors of gouache. So there's this sort of amorphous fluidness about them. And then these are earlier works in the Psyche series where I was thinking of the spirits, the Psyches. These are collage paintings and drawings where this is one of the first times when I started to integrate fabric into the collages themselves. And these are, you'll see this sort of relevance. This is Psyche 4. And then in my fiber art, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Nereids, which are sea nymphs. And again, working with the ocean, and the healing power of water, but also the female spirit that is that healing force. Now, there's a physicality about these works as I was making them. These are the newest ones in the show. When I was in my late 30s, I struggled with anorexia, and I was very much about denying the body. And I think that all of this body of work that you see is an embracing of life. It's about saying that our bodies are whole and our bodies are good. Sometimes it's hard for me to talk about my work, but I think that I try to speak through the scar, not through the wound. And I think the wound, the scar is the beautiful part that is healed over. And so Myriads is the latest work, which is about that gentle physicality that I'm building. And I love that they're shapely, and I love that they take space. Because it's kind of the way I want to feel about my own body. They are made of polyester. Well, actually, this is nylon tulle, and it's sewn through with a sewing machine. And then I take the tool, and I roll it, and I create these forms. And I'll show you a detail of some of the thread work. I take them and I roll them, and then I hand sew them with invisible thread. And I love the idea of working with invisible thread, because it's this idea that you create a shape and you leave no trace. So that's what these pieces are about. They're about the fullness of life. I'm 54, and they are about that moment. So I've been a full-time artist for about a year, and it's about that full embodiment of my promise. I think it's very common for many people to have to wait sometimes in their lives, but everything that I have done in my life builds me to today. Installation art, this is me in my garage with Hydra. Hydra is kind of fun because Hydra's been many different shapes. So some people have said to me, like, well, what do? Are you like a painter, or are you like a sculptor, or are you a fiber artist? And I was never able to pick a lane. I refused to pick a lane. So I fiber, collage, aluminum, graphite, acrylic sculpture. The idea is to follow the question. It's not about the medium, like I do this. Each material has a different relationship to light and transcendence, the body and time. And depth in your work doesn't require narrowness. The practice is unified by my obsession for transformation, repair, both what the body holds and what it releases. And this is me using the wonderful hydraulic lift and my full safety regalia. I like my ensemble. I felt extremely fetching in that. So this is Hydra. Now this install that I'm going to show you is when it was originally installed in Philly. And I think what's really interesting about this artwork is that when Cole and I installed it together, we were actually recreating a piece together, relating and responding to the notion of what it wanted to be in this space. And my study and my meditation practice teaches me that you are in your moment, and the art teaches you where it wants to go. You just need to listen. And I've spent much of my life learning to listen. And so this is in a more vertical configuration. What I did is I did these vector drawings. I used a fabricator to CNC cut frosted acrylic. Then I took all these flat pieces of acrylic, went home out in my yard with a heat gun, you know, like the stuff you use in the kitchen to like make desserts and stuff. So I use this heat gun, and I'm like, just like, you know, melting the thing. And then I drew on all the pieces with this light, fast color pencil, so they have this sort of luminous color. And that was that piece. And then Phoenix is one of the older pieces in the show, and this piece was made during the pandemic lockdown, and it's basically it's graphite on drafting film drawn on both sides. Some of the drafting film is sewn together, and some of it is actually built out with double-sided tape. It's assembled. I don't know if Caitlin is here tonight, but Caitlin,
Caitlin.
I want to give Caitlin a special shout out because she actually, it was in like 10 pieces. I kind of laid it out and I was like, Caitlin, could you like just, so she took the double-sided tape. It's an archival type of tape, and she meticulously, for hours, assembled this piece so that it was completely durable and it's suspended with monofilament wire. And then she helped me light the piece, which was also like an act of Congress, because you have to light the wall. You're not lighting, a lot of people think you light the artwork. Not always. Sometimes you light the wall and it bounces through. And the idea is that Phoenix is about, again, rising from the ashes, rising from who you were and becoming who you must become. And so I will say in summary that Ascension, the title of the show is Ascension. And Ascension is not about escape. It is what happens when something has been broken open enough to rise. So when I say broken open, I mean that sometimes everything must fall apart for anything to actually come back together again, for anything to make sense. And I think that that is my life of reclaiming, which is why I say that as an artist, or even as a person, you are the sum of where you have been. And I think the best thing that I've been able to do for myself is to let go of regret. If we honor our choices, whatever those were, the work becomes true and the work becomes strong. If you know your past, you can actually understand where you're going. And I would say that every work in this show is about that process of rising. This is me with a lot of red lipstick. I don't know, that color's a bit, all right, whatever. But so that's my website and my Instagram. And Bridget, raise your hand. So this is Bridget Mayer. She is offering, I do have an MBA in fine. I'm just gonna say all the words for sale. So Bridget is representing the work. And if you want to make inquiries about any of the work, I've got her email there, bmayer@bmayerart.com. And she's awesome. And then I want to thank a lot of people to thank. So Bridget Mayer for agreeing to go with me on the journey of the show in Broward College. And so she helped me select the work, which was great, and believed in the vision of the space. And Cole Miller, who designed the exhibition with me together, he's an incredibly humble person who's an unsung hero. He has an exquisite eye and an incredible attention to detail and is a ninja on the scissor lift. So I want to just honor him. And then, of course, Caitlin Manthrop, who I talked about earlier, and then the wonderful Kira O'Keefe, Naomi Morella Quijada, and Agnel Thomas, who all supported different aspects of this dream for me. They got together and hung the Phoenix on the scissor lift with me. There were like 5 people involved to get it up there. And of course, the Rosemary Duffy Larson Endowment for her generous support of the show. And so I will now be quiet and see if anybody has questions. Yes?
You said you did 30 years of office work. So is this your retirement job?
Yeah, so I worked for the California state system for about 30 years. And I was very lucky to be able to retire at 53. So this is my full-time, I'm a full-time artist. I did a lot of, when I was working, I did a lot of, big girl jobs, managed things and budgets. But I think the great thing about that work was that it taught me to be professional and to be accountable. And one of the things about being an artist is it's not just, as we all know, we have to juggle a lot of things, whether we're a working mom, whether we are, we have a dream and we have something that we have to do during the day to pay for it. But yeah, I would get up, actually, an interesting story. I worked mostly in hospitals, and I learned to get up at 2 a.m. before my day job because I used to do shift schedules for emergency medicine residents. And they got by on no sleep. And I learned how to live on like 5 or 6 hours of sleep every day so I could get my artwork done. I'm not saying, I don't know if I recommend it, but I did get my artwork done. And actually, all the work that you see in the show, except for the fiber pieces, was when I was working full-time. So I wanted to get it done badly. I mean, I think it's that, if you have a fire, you're going to figure it out. You're going to find a way. It was tough. I mean, and there were some years where I couldn't, wasn't great. But I think it's about that daily commitment to being in the studio. And sometimes you make good work, and sometimes it's like, Yes.
So I'm Holly's cousin, and you had mentioned the piece that's right there to the left, that you did that piece based on your cousins. And I want to mention that all of her cousins are here tonight. And so I want to understand why you did that piece based on all of us who grew up with you, understood you, and went through the same challenges and know who you are. And we want to understand, what made you create that piece?
I think that's a great question. I love you for asking that. So I was thinking more and more as I started to make my work, especially in 2024, I was thinking about a lot of the women in my life. And I always saw you as extremely strong, because I think you can fly a plane, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so Erin, unbelievable, she's amazing. But I thought about all the women in my life, and I think of Hydra. So this piece is called Hydra because it's the sea creature that when you cut off one head, another grows. And I always thought about us, all the women in my life. All of you had your own challenges that you had to live through, but you didn't give up. And sometimes you go through the fire and you're stronger and you're clearer. And I certainly see that in you. And so I think about Hydra in this sort of the fullness of fluidness. But the thing about Hydra that's really interesting is that it's not just about the piece, it's about the shadows. The shadows on the wall, because when you look at the piece in there, they look like birds. The shadow play, it looks like birds. And that was really important to me in the gallery when you see it in there, because sometimes there's this alter image about flight. And so I think of all of you in that way as having flight. But sometimes you don't know it yet. They always say that, and I always love this, that you know how you wear ruby slippers? This idea that, and I think it was in The Wizard of Oz that the witch tells Dorothy that if you could always, if you click your ruby slippers, you can fly. And in fact, you were always wearing your ruby slippers, but you didn't know it. You know what I mean? That's that metaphor of clicking your ruby slippers. And so in this way, this piece flies, but I didn't know it until I installed it with Cole. And he looked on the wall and he was like, oh, those are birds. I was always wearing my bird slippers, but Cole was like, do you see it? Thank you. Yes?
Was there ever like an ideal position that you wanted to put for Hydra, or does it really depend on the gallery?
I think that Hydra, along with all of my work, every space that I'm in, I always am thinking about. I mean, it was originally designed just because it was a long space, but I think given the notion of the rising, I really love the verticality of this particular space. I think all of my work, though, is very site-specific. So, like, if somebody was like, I've got a 40-foot ceiling and it's 60 feet down, you know, I would probably make more of Hydra to fill the thing. You know, like, I'm always responding to the space directly. But I really do particularly love the sight lines and how high she could go. And I was also like stunned that the scissor lift went 30 feet.
Yep, yeah.
Like we were like I was like nosebleed up there, but we survived. So yeah, yes.
Holly, with Hydra, I love this photo and I love the color. I just see like fashion, Gucci, like just where does the color come from in your work? Especially Hydra, I'm just curious.
This is really, I think there's a part of Florida is embroiled in me, because I grew up around the ocean, you know, because I remember we would be, I mentioned swimming pools, and my sister actually would take me to, we go to Hollover, right? And she would take me and she would tan. Debbie always tan. I would roast. I would like peel it like sheets, but I remember the color of the water is still with me. And I also think, you know, California has a quality of light and just the foliage and the natural beauty of that space. So, I mean, I definitely have to admit my work is definitely inspired by nature, but definitely the sea and the California foliage for sure. Any other questions?
Why do you choose Garrett College for your gallery? Because if you could see it from
I didn't quite catch that.
Oh, I think a little louder if you don't mind.
why do you choose Broward College as your gallery location?
Oh, why did I, so it was an open call, and I think, you know, I love showing in community-based exhibition spaces, number one, because you can, you know, put up a 25-foot thing and then be like, let's suspend an 11-foot drawing, and, you know, Cole was down for it, you know. But I think there's an adventureness about this kind of choose your own adventure. So I do love educational settings. I thought the gallery was just really beautiful, and just exquisitely beautiful. And I also wanted to see my family. And I actually, it's shameful, but I did put it, I think I did put it in the cover letter. I was like, I have a family out here. I really did want to see my family. And I haven't seen all of my family together in many, many years. So it was a very rare opportunity to have this happen and to share my artwork with them. I mean, they always knew me as the artsy kid, but to be able to share this in a much more mature way, fully realized, is a gift. And I wanted to, you know, I have always loved the community college system. I went to a community college, and, you know, it's something that I take great pride in being a part of. yeah, so this is great. So the San Francisco Art Institute, which unfortunately is no longer around anymore, I got a BFA in new genres and a MFA in new genres, and the way that we often think of it that way is it's kind of like interdisciplinary practice. So my very early art was, I did performance art, I did video art, I was making paintings, I was setting things on fire, like I did all the things, like I was very sort of, I guess we would call me third wave or fourth wave feminist, but I loved this idea that I wasn't programmed to pick, this is like, you're going to be a painter. Like, I think that when I was young, I was super defiant. I was like, I'm going to be my own woman and I'm going to make art the way, I wanted that freedom. And so I picked a field called new genres, which was, nobody really knew what that was. I kind of like that too.
So as a maker of things, what about your undergraduate education, which is very foundational to start with, has informed anything of what you do?
Oh, you know what I forgot? Probably one of the most important points here. I went to the New World School of the Arts in Miami, and so I graduated in 1989, and my mentor was Ed Love. Anybody heard of Ed Love here? So Ed Wong was a remarkable sculptor. He originally taught at Howard University and was just one of the biggest influences in my life. And he taught me how to weld. He introduced me to the whole Mexican muralist movement. But one of the things that New World School of the Arts was at the time, and I don't know now, but they were hardcore drawing. Like, 6-hour contour drawing, they would just, and I went to Payback, which was the program before that. These were very early magnet arts programs in Miami. And I will say that drawing was heavily informed my practice, and I learned to draw and paint definitely through New World. I mean, full stop, definitely. I got to the Art Institute, and the Art Institute in San Francisco they were less painting and drawing focused. They were more about what is conceptually driving your work. But I had already sort of come with that toolbox of I felt like I could paint and draw. But one of my handicaps was I was a little attached to I can paint and draw. So some of this was about a release to where I paint and draw when it makes sense to me to do so, and when it carries what my conceptual approach is. But at the Art Institute, I learned that conceptual basis of using the materials that met my need. And sometimes so some of the first fiber art I did was at the Art Institute. I was studying a lot of feminist fiber artists, and there was an understanding of the activism around first and second wave feminism, and that was important to me. Suzanne Lacey and Valley Export and a lot of these very boundary-spanning, kind of wonderfully wild women. And that inspired the spirit that is in my work now. Other questions?
Holly, what year were you at the Art Institute? Someone wanted to know, because she was there too.
Yeah, 1995. Yeah, and I graduated with my MFA in 1995.
Can I mention something?
Yeah.
So Holly was a presidential scholar in 1989. Like Clinton, George Bush recognized her, and she was she was nationally renowned artist in high school.
What? Wait, you've never told anyone that?
And if you look her up, you can see how she was literally named by George Bush as
Wow.
one of the best artists in the country.
Amazing, thank you.
What high school did you go to?
Thank you, Erin. Thank you very
that
Is it
mentioned.
batch, like
New World School for the Arts.
the high school and also after that?
So at the time, it was only a high school, there was no college. They had the 90-day system, but it was New World School, it was just a high school. Now they have the college.
Yeah.
But then I went to the San Francisco Art Institute after that for the undergrad and master's.
Okay. Interesting.
No bad questions, what you got?
Hi, I just wanted to say that your work is very, very inspiring and it's really, really, really beautiful. But I didn't want to leave it out saying that. Thank you so much for coming here. Like this, I really appreciate this. Your work is so gorgeous.
You're such a sweetheart, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just want to say, how I work with artists from around the United States. Holly is driven. She, as she said, is waking up very early to make her work. For you art students here that want to have a professional career in the arts, working with gallerists like me, it takes a lot of drive, a lot of work, and then a lot of clarity about what your work is about as it evolves. And it also takes a lot of vulnerability to stand up in front of a group of people and share your stories. And I'm just so appreciative to know some of the history that's woven into the stories of your art and how it connects to your family. For me, often those types of stories and meanings that artists put into the work become the most memorable and sustaining. So just thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with us, and for your family for being here to be a part of it. So, thank you.